The first time the machine spirit saved my life, I didn't even realize it had happened until 3 hours later, when I was sitting in the maintenance bay with shaking hands, trying to eat a ration bar, and failing because I couldn't stop thinking about how close I'd come to dying. My name is Engineer 3rd Class Mara Helsing, and I've been serving with the 308th Cadian Mechanized Infantry for 6 years now. I'm not a proper tech priest, not one of the red-robed adepts of Mars with their augmetics and their deep mysteries. I'm what the Mechanicus calls a lay technician, someone trained enough to maintain Imperial equipment in the field, but not initiated into the deeper secrets of the cult Mechanicus. I know the prayers, I know the rituals, I know how to coax a reluctant engine to life or silence a misfiring weapon, but I don't pretend to understand the true nature of the machine spirit the way a real tech priest does. Or at least, I didn't. Not until Graia the 7, when everything I thought I understood about machines and their spirits got turned completely upside down. We'd been on Graia 7 for 4 months, fighting a grinding campaign against a mixed force of heretics and traitors who'd seized control of 3 major hive cities. It was brutal, ugly work, street to street, building to building, sometimes room to room. The kind of warfare where you measure progress in meters instead of kilometers and count casualties in the hundreds for objectives that don't even have names, just grid coordinates on a map. I was assigned to a Chimera armored personnel carrier designated Faithkeeper's Promise, call sign Victor 37. She was a solid, reliable vehicle, 38 years old and still running strong despite having served on 11 different worlds. Her hull bore the scars of countless engagements, patched armor plates where penetrating hits had been repaired, scorch marks from fires that had been extinguished, dents and gouges from impacts that hadn't quite made it through. The crew had painted her in standard Cadian colors, dark green with black trim, and someone had stenciled a prayer to the God Emperor along the right side of the hull in white Gothic script. The crew consisted of 5 personnel. The commander was Sergeant Corman, a grizzled veteran with 26 years of service and a bionic left arm he'd received after losing the original on Batalis 3rd. The driver was Corporal Venn, young but skilled, with an instinctive feel for how to handle the Chimera in difficult terrain. The gunner was Trooper Lask, responsible for the turret-mounted multi-laser and hull-mounted heavy bolter, and then there was the infantry squad. We transported 10 guardsmen under Sergeant Hallis, who rode in the troop compartment and deployed to fight on foot while we provided fire support. My job was to keep the Chimera running. That meant daily maintenance, emergency repairs, ammunition handling, systems monitoring, and about 1,000 other tasks that kept the vehicle operational. I worked from the small crew compartment near the engine, a cramped space filled with tools, spare parts, diagnostic equipment, and the various offerings you're supposed to present to the machine. Spirit, sacred oils, incense, holy unguents, maintenance manuals inscribed with prayers. Faithkeeper's Promise had been running perfectly for weeks. Her engine was strong, her weapons functioned flawlessly, her armor held against everything the enemy threw at us. I'd performed all the proper rituals, maintained every system according to the technical liturgies, made all the appropriate offerings to her machine spirit. Everything was exactly as it should be. That should have been my first warning. In my experience, when everything is going perfectly in a combat zone, the universe is just setting you up for something horrible. The day it happened started like any other day on Graia the 7. We woke before dawn in a temporary defensive position in what had once been a commercial district, ate cold rations because fires would give away our position, and prepared for the day's operation. The plan was simple: advance 3 kilometers into enemy-held territory, seize a fortified intersection that controlled access to the industrial sector, hold it while engineers set up defensive positions, then pull back to await further orders. Simple plans are usually the ones that go wrong most catastrophically. I performed my morning inspection ritual while the sky was still dark, working by the light of a red-filtered lumen lamp that wouldn't destroy anyone's night vision. I walked around the Chimera, reciting the litany of inspection, checking every surface for damage or wear. The tracks were in good condition. The road wheels showed no cracks. The armor was intact. I opened the engine compartment and checked oil levels, coolant levels, fuel filters, air intake, exhaust ports. Everything was within acceptable parameters. Then I climbed inside and began testing the internal systems: Vox communications, navigation equipment, fire control systems, ammunition feeds, targeting auspex, internal lighting, ventilation, emergency hatches. I worked through a checklist that I'd memorized years ago, verifying each item in sequence. Everything functioned perfectly. The machine spirit felt calm, content, ready for action. I've learned to sense these things over the years. You spend enough time with a particular vehicle, and you start to pick up on subtle signs that indicate the state of its machine spirit. The way the engine sounds when it starts, the responsiveness of the controls, even the smell of the interior somehow conveys information about whether the spirit is pleased or angry, cooperative or resistant. Faithkeeper's promise felt good, strong, confident, ready. At 0630 hours, we mounted up and moved out. The infantry squad climbed into the troop compartment, 10 men in full combat gear carrying lasguns, grenades, demo charges, and all the other equipment they'd need for urban combat. Sergeant Hallis gave me a nod as he passed. We'd worked together long enough to develop a professional respect, even though he was infantry and I was crew. His men settled into their seats, checking weapons and equipment with the practiced efficiency of veterans. Sergeant Corman took his position in the commander's cupola. Corporal Venn slid into the driver's seat. Trooper Lask manned the turret controls, and I positioned myself at my station near the engine compartment, where I could monitor all the vehicle's systems. The engine rumbled to life with a deep, powerful sound that I felt through the deck plates, and we rolled forward to join the rest of the column. We were part of a mechanized assault force consisting of 8 Chimeras, 4 Lehman Russ battle tanks, and 2 Hellhounds for close assault support. Enough firepower to take on anything short of enemy armor, and enough mobility to get in fast and get out faster if things went wrong. The column formed up in the pre-dawn darkness and began advancing into enemy territory. The route took us through abandoned streets lined with damaged buildings. Most of the windows were broken. Many of the structures showed combat damage from previous engagements, and debris littered the roadway: rubble from collapsed walls, burned-out civilian vehicles, chunks of rockcrete that had been blown free by explosions. Corporal Venn navigated carefully, avoiding obstacles that could damage the tracks or suspension. For the first hour, we encountered no resistance. The streets were eerily quiet, just the rumble of our engines echoing off the buildings, and the occasional crack of distant weapons fire from other sectors. The infantry stayed alert in the troop compartment, weapons ready, but there was nothing to shoot at, just empty streets and hollow buildings, and the constant tension of knowing the enemy was out there somewhere, watching, waiting. I monitored my instruments, watching the readouts that told me how Faithkeeper's promise was functioning. Engine temperature was normal, oil pressure was good, fuel consumption was within expected parameters. The weapon systems showed green across the board, ammunition counts were full, targeting auspex was detecting nothing but friendly signatures. Everything was perfect. We were 2 kilometers into the advance when the machine spirit first tried to warn me. It was subtle at first, so subtle I almost missed it. A slight fluctuation in the engine note, barely perceptible, but there if you were listening for it. Not the sound of mechanical failure. I know what that sounds like. And this wasn't it. This was something else, something I'd never quite heard before. The engine was running perfectly from a technical standpoint. All the instruments showed normal readings, but there was something in the sound that felt wrong. I frowned, checking my displays more carefully. Everything still showed green. Oil pressure, coolant temperature, fuel flow, electrical output, hydraulic pressure, all within normal ranges. But that sound was still there, that tiny variation in the engine note that shouldn't exist. I pulled out my data slate and ran a diagnostic scan. The machine spirit of the Chimera interfaced with the diagnostic equipment, allowing me to query its various subsystems. The results came back clean. No faults detected, no anomalies reported, No warnings flagged. According to every objective measure available to me, Faithkeeper's promise was functioning flawlessly, but that sound was still there. I climbed up to the commander's position and tapped Sergeant Corman on the shoulder. He pulled one side of his headset away from his ear and leaned down so I could speak to him over the engine noise. "Sir, I'm getting an unusual reading from the engine," I said, which was technically a lie since I wasn't getting any readings at all, just a feeling. "Request permission to recommend we fall back to the rear of the column while I investigate." Corman frowned. "What kind of unusual reading?" "Hard to specify, sir. Just something that doesn't feel right." He looked at me for a long moment. We'd worked together for 2 years, and he knew I didn't make frivolous reports. On the other hand, we were in the middle of an advance, and falling back without good reason would disrupt the column formation and potentially create gaps that the enemy could exploit. "Can you investigate while we're moving?" he asked. "Yes, sir. But if there's a serious problem, I'd rather not be at the front when it manifests." He considered this, then nodded. "I'll request permission to drop to rear position. Stay on it, Helsing. I don't want to be explaining to the regiment why we broke down in hostile territory." "Understood, sir." He voxed the column commander and got permission to fall back. Corporal Venn reduced speed, letting the other vehicles pass us until we were in the rear position, just ahead of one of the Lehman Russ tanks. I returned to my station and began a more thorough investigation. The engine was still making that sound, that subtle variation that shouldn't be there. I pulled out my toolkit and began physically checking components, looking for anything that might explain it. Fuel injectors, ignition systems, timing mechanisms, drive linkages. Everything was exactly as it should be. I checked the transmission, the differential, the track drives. Perfect condition, all of them. I was starting to think I'd imagined the whole thing when the machine spirit spoke to me. "I know how that sounds. I know what you're thinking, that I'm delusional, or that I'm assigning meaning to random events, or that I'm just another superstitious guardsman who doesn't understand the technology she's working with. But I'm telling you what happened. And what happened was that the machine spirit of Faithkeeper's promise communicated with me directly. It wasn't words, not exactly. It was more like a sudden conviction, an absolute certainty that appeared fully formed in my mind. The engine was fine. The transmission was fine. All the mechanical systems were fine. But something was wrong with the route ahead, and the machine spirit wanted us to stop. I've heard tech priests talk about communing with machine spirits, about receiving guidance from the motive force that animates all technology. I'd always assumed they were speaking metaphorically, or that it was some kind of specialized training that let them interpret data in ways I couldn't understand. But this wasn't metaphorical. This was direct, immediate, and absolutely clear. The machine spirit was warning me. I looked at my instruments again. Everything still showed green. There was no logical reason to believe anything was wrong. But the certainty was overwhelming, undeniable, stronger than any rational analysis. I climbed up to Corman's position again. "Sir, I need us to stop. Right now." He looked down at me, and I saw the calculation in his eyes. We were in hostile territory, in an active combat zone, and I was asking him to halt the vehicle based on nothing but my word. If he stopped, and there was no problem, it would look like incompetence or cowardice. If he didn't stop, and something went wrong, people could die. "Define right now, Helsing." "Within the next 30 seconds, sir. Please." He held my gaze for another moment, then made his decision. "Then, halt. All stop." The Chimera slowed to a stop. The Lehman Russ behind us pulled up close, and I could see the tank commander standing in his cupola, looking annoyed at the unexpected halt. Corman voxed the column commander to report our status vehicle stopped for emergency inspection, nature of fault unknown, estimated time to resolution unclear. I jumped down from the Chimera and walked forward along the street, searching for whatever the machine spirit had sensed. The rest of the column was about 100 meters ahead now, still advancing toward the objective. The street ahead looked the same as the street behind damaged buildings, scattered debris, no obvious threats, and then I saw it, about 20 meters ahead. Right in the path the column was taking, there was a patch of road surface that looked slightly different from the surrounding pavement. Not obviously different, you'd have to be looking for it to notice. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. The color was fractionally off, the texture wasn't quite right, and there were marks around the edges that suggested the section had been recently disturbed and poorly concealed. An improvised explosive device. Had to be. A big one, buried under the road surface, waiting for a vehicle to pass over it. The column ahead was already past it. They'd taken a slightly different line through the street, veering around an obstacle that had guided them clear. But Faithkeeper's promise would have driven right over it if we'd continued. I ran back to the Chimera. "Sir, IED in the road ahead, 20 meters, dead center of our path. Large charge, professionally concealed." Corman's expression didn't change, but I saw his hands tighten on the edge of the cupola. "You're certain?" "Certain enough to stake my life on it, sir. We need engineers." He voxed the column commander again, this time reporting a confirmed IED and requesting combat engineers and a Trojan mine clearance unit. Then he looked down at me. "How did you spot it, Helsing? From inside the vehicle?" I hesitated. "How do you explain that the machine spirit warned you? How do you tell a veteran sergeant that you stopped his vehicle in the middle of enemy territory because you had a feeling?" "The machine spirit, sir. It knew something was wrong." I expected skepticism, maybe even anger. Instead, Corman just nodded slowly. "The Omnissiah protects the faithful," he said quietly. "Good work, Helsing." The combat engineers arrived 15 minutes later, along with a Trojaner equipped with a heavy flail for detonating mines. They examined the suspicious section of road and confirmed my assessment: large IED, probably 2 or 3 heavy artillery shells wired together with a pressure trigger, designed to destroy anything that drove over it. They marked the area, set up a cordon, and prepared to either detonate it remotely or disarm it, depending on whether we needed to use this route for future operations. If Faithkeeper's promise had driven over that IED, the blast would have penetrated the bottom armor, killed everyone inside instantly, and probably damaged or destroyed the Lehman Russ following behind us. 15 lives saved because the machine spirit had warned me, and I'd been willing to trust what it was telling me. We rejoined the column after the engineers cleared the route, and the operation continued. We reached the objective, seized the intersection, held it while the engineers fortified the position, and pulled back according to plan. No casualties, mission successful, just another day in the grinding campaign for Graia the Seven. But I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The machine spirit had known, somehow, without any sensors that could detect buried explosives, without any logical reason to suspect that particular stretch of road. The machine spirit of Faithkeeper's promise had known there was danger and had tried to warn me. That night, back at the temporary base, I performed the evening maintenance ritual with more care and reverence than I'd ever shown before. I cleaned every system, applied sacred oils to every moving part, recited every prayer with complete focus and attention, and when I was done, I did something I'd never done before. I spoke directly to the machine spirit. "Thank you," I said quietly, alone in the maintenance bay with my hand resting on the Chimera's hull. "Thank you for protecting us. Thank you for the warning. I'm listening now. I'll always listen." I felt foolish saying it out loud. But I also felt like it was important, like the machine spirit needed to know that I understood, that I was grateful, that I would honor what it had done. The engine was silent and cold, shut down for the night. But I swear I felt something, a sense of acknowledgement, of satisfaction, of connection between myself and the ancient, powerful spirit that animated this war machine. Over the following weeks, it happened again. Not often. The machine spirit didn't communicate with me every day, or even every week. But when there was danger I couldn't perceive through normal means, when something was wrong in ways my instruments couldn't detect, the machine spirit found ways to warn me. Sometimes it was subtle, an unusual vibration in the steering that made Corporal Venn instinctively choose a different path, causing us to avoid an ambush position. Sometimes it was more direct, the targeting auspex suddenly refusing to lock onto a particular building, which turned out to be rigged with explosives that detonated when another unit engaged it. Once, the multi-laser jammed at a critical moment during a firefight, forcing us to withdraw early, and we later learned that enemy anti-tank weapons had been moving into position to engage us if we'd stayed. I started keeping a record of these incidents in a personal journal. Nothing official. I wasn't sure how to report. The machine spirit saved us again, through proper channels. Just a private log of every time something inexplicable happened that kept us alive. By the end of the Graya the 7 campaign, I had documented 17 separate incidents where the machine spirit of Faithkeeper's promise had intervened to protect us. 17 times we should have died and didn't. I showed the journal to Sergeant Corman after the campaign ended, and we were back on the regimental transport ship, preparing for reassignment to our next deployment. He read through it carefully, his augmetic fingers turning the pages with mechanical precision. "You think I'm crazy," I said when he finished reading. He handed the journal back to me. "No, I think you're faithful. And in my experience, the Emperor protects the faithful." He paused, then added, "I've served with armored units for 26 years, Helsing. I've seen vehicles survive things they shouldn't survive. I've seen weapons malfunction at exactly the right moment to save lives. I've seen machine spirits do things that can't be explained by technical manuals or engineering principles. You're not crazy. You're just finally paying attention. Do you think the tech priests know, I mean really know, about how machine spirits actually work? Some of them, maybe. The ones who've been doing this long enough and paying close enough attention." He looked at me seriously. "You know what this means, though. You have a responsibility now. The machine spirit trusts you. It's communicating with you because it knows you'll listen and act on what it tells you. That's not something to take lightly." "I know, sir." "Good. Because I'm putting you in for commendation and recommending you for advanced technical training. We need more engineers who understand that maintaining these machines isn't just about following procedures, it's about building a relationship with the spirits that animate them." The commendation never came through administrative error somewhere up the chain of command, but I did get approved for the advanced training. I spent 6 months at a Mechanicus facility on Proxima, learning deeper mysteries of the machine cult, studying under actual tech priests who taught me things that aren't in any technical manual. They taught me that every machine has a spirit, and that spirit is real. Not metaphorical, not symbolic, but actually real, a presence, an intelligence, something that exists in ways we don't fully understand but can't deny. They taught me that the relationship between a technician and a machine spirit is reciprocal. You don't just maintain the machine, you commune with it, honor it, build trust with it, and if you do that faithfully, if you show proper respect and devotion, the machine spirit will protect you in ways that transcend mere mechanical function. They taught me that the prayers aren't just procedure, they're communication. When you recite the litany of starting, you're not just remembering the steps to start an engine, you're greeting the machine spirit and requesting its cooperation. When you apply sacred oils, you're not just lubricating components, you're making an offering that shows respect. When you burn incense, you're creating an environment that pleases the spirit and demonstrates your reverence. Most importantly, they taught me to listen, not just to the sounds a machine makes, but to what the machine spirit is trying to tell you. The subtle signs, the quiet warnings, the gentle guidance that you'll miss completely if you're only paying attention to your instruments and technical readouts. I returned to the 308th Cadian after my training, and they assigned me to a new Chimera. This one was designated Emperor's Mercy, a newer vehicle with only 8 years of service and a machine spirit that was younger, more energetic, less experienced than Faithkeeper's promise had been. Building a relationship with this new spirit took time. I had to learn its preferences, its personality, the particular ways it liked to be maintained and honored. But I applied everything I'd learned, and gradually Emperor's Mercy began to trust me the same way Faithkeeper's promise had. The warnings came, subtle at first, but growing clearer as our bond strengthened. The machine spirit guided me, protected the crew, helped us survive situations that should have killed us. 3 years later, I made Engineer second class. 5 years after that, Engineer first class. I've trained other technicians now, teaching them what I've learned about working with machine spirits. Some of them get it, they understand that this isn't just about technical skill, it's about faith and relationship and reverence. Others never quite grasp it, and they remain merely competent technicians instead of becoming true engineers. I've served on 9 worlds now, maintained dozens of different vehicles, worked with countless machine spirits. Each one is different. Each one has its own personality and preferences, but the fundamental truth remains the same. If you honor the machine spirit, if you build a relationship based on trust and mutual respect, it will protect you. I've been saved by machine spirits more times than I can count now. Warnings that prevented ambushes, malfunctions that forced us away from danger, sudden bursts of performance that got us out of situations that should have been fatal. Every time, I give thanks. Every time, I perform the proper rituals with renewed dedication. Every time, I'm reminded that I'm not just a technician maintaining equipment, I'm a servant honored with the trust of ancient, powerful spirits that have chosen to work with humanity in our endless wars. The first time the machine spirit saved my life, I didn't understand what had happened. I thought it was luck, or coincidence, or maybe just my own intuition picking up on something my conscious mind hadn't registered. But I understand now. It wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't just me. It was the machine spirit of Faithkeeper's promise, watching over its crew, protecting those who had honored it and cared for it, and treated it with the reverence it deserved. It was ancient intelligence, choosing to intervene, to use its power to preserve human lives, because those humans had proven themselves worthy of protection. That's what happens when the machine spirit saves your life. You realize that the machines we fight with aren't just tools or equipment or weapons platforms. They're partners, allies, beings with their own form of awareness, who fight alongside us by choice rather than compulsion. And once you understand that, once you truly internalize it, everything changes. You stop thinking of maintenance as a chore and start seeing it as communion. You stop viewing technical specifications as dry facts and start recognizing them as sacred knowledge. You stop treating your assigned vehicle as government property and start honoring it as a living partner in war. I've seen things in my years of service that I can't explain through engineering or physics or any rational framework. I've seen machine spirits do impossible things to protect their crews. I've seen weapons fire when they should be empty, engines run when they should be dead, armor hold when it should shatter. I've seen the undeniable evidence that we serve alongside intelligences far older and more powerful than we can fully comprehend, and that they choose to help us because we've proven ourselves worthy of their assistance. The tech priests say that the Omnissiah, the machine god, is the interface between humanity and technology, that every machine spirit is a fragment of divine power, a manifestation of the motive force that animates all creation. I'm not educated enough in theology to know if that's literally true, but I know what I've experienced. I know that the machine spirits are real, that they're aware, that they can save your life if you honor them properly. And I know that every day I serve, every vehicle I maintain, every ritual I perform is part of a relationship that goes far deeper than just keeping equipment operational. It's a sacred trust between human and machine, between flesh and metal, between the temporary and the eternal. The first time the machine spirit saved my life, I was too ignorant to understand what had happened. But I'm not ignorant anymore. Now when the machine spirit warns me, I listen immediately. When it guides me, I follow without hesitation. When it protects me, I give thanks with complete sincerity, because I understand now what happens when the machine spirit saves your life. You become part of something larger than yourself, something older than human civilization, something that will continue long after you're dead and forgotten. You become a link in an ancient chain of service and devotion that stretches back to the dark age of technology and forward to the end of time itself. You become worthy of protection. And in the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, that might be the most precious gift anyone can receive. The machine spirits are real. They're watching, they're listening. And if you honor them, if you serve them faithfully, if you treat them with the reverence they deserve, they will save your life again and again and again. I know because it's happened to me. And it will keep happening as long as I remain faithful. The Omnissiah protects. The machine spirit endures. And we, the faithful servants of both, survive to fight another day.